And thanks to you at home for joining us this hour. You ready for this one? These geniuses. You know, if you are gonna have somebody who consolidates the whole 250-year-old tripartite system of checks and balances that we got from the founding fathers in this country, if you're gonna have someone who says, you know, there are parts of the Constitution that must be terminated, if you're gonna have somebody who calls himself a king and who says elections don't count unless he wins them, if you're going to have an overthrow of the constitutional republic in favor of all power consolidated in one man who says term limits don't apply to him and Congress and the courts don't constrain him and all the rest of it, if you're going to do it, if you are going to abolish the American form of government in favor of an autocratic and unopposed rule by one man, he better be good at it. Am I right? You know, he better be compass mentis, on the ball. If you're gonna like overthrow 250 years of who we are as a country to instead just be like, l'état, c'est you. Like, if we're just gonna have it be that one dude, you just hope that dude is with it, right? Or instead, you could have what we have. On Monday this week, President Donald Trump went to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., where he has recently fired the entire board and appointed himself as the new chairman. While skulking around that national cultural treasure on Monday, where he now personally intends to choose awardees. So get ready for a lot of, Kid Rock and children's choirs who sing songs about the greatness of Donald Trump. While he was skulking around the halls of the Kennedy Center on Monday, President Trump, on Monday, announced, surprise, that the very next day, he would be releasing all files related to the investigation of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. All files on this subject with no redactions would be released the next day, on Tuesday. And so, because he said so, and what else is government other than just whatever Donald Trump says? Because he said so, the National Archives on Tuesday, in fact, posted online over 60,000 pages of government documents on this subject. So he says it on Monday, they posted this stuff on Tuesday. Now, it's Friday Eve now, right? It's Thursday night. For all the conspiracy theories and drama that we as a country have built up around the JFK assassination in the past 60 plus years, ask yourself this. Over the last couple of days, have you heard anything in the news? Have you seen any big headlines about the amazing revelations in these documents? You've seen news stories about how, wow, these new documents finally shed new light on the assassination, or that, some previously unknown fact about it has been revealed, and this changes everything. You seen any news stories like that? No, you have not. And that is because the documents that genius Donald Trump insisted on Monday had to be released on Tuesday, those documents were almost entirely documents that had been previously released to the public under President Joe Biden when he released a bunch of them, under other presidents who had released other stuff. Almost all of this stuff had previously been released anyway. But this was a little different, right? Because Donald Trump, genius, insisted that the documents he was ordering to be released, these documents would have to be unredacted. He made that explicit in his order. Totally unredacted, nothing crossed out. And so, on his orders, they released all of these documents that had been previously released, except this time, they had nothing crossed out, nothing redacted. And it turns out, you know what had been redacted the other times they had released these documents? You know what had been under those black boxes in previous releases of these same documents? You know what was under the Sharpie scratch-outs on all these pages? Turns out what had been redacted was the social security numbers and birth dates of tons and tons of random people who worked for the government around the time that the Kennedy assassination was being investigated. Ta-da! So that is what he has ordered released. That's the big revelation from Donald Trump. Headline: White House seeks to contain damage from personal data in Kennedy files. Headline, Social Security numbers and other private information unmasked in JFK files. These geniuses, these big brains. Among the people who Donald Trump has just doxed by publishing his full and unredacted Social Security number for no reason at all is his own lawyer, Joe DeGeneva, who worked for the Trump campaign and who represented Trump on some of the weirdest Russia and Ukraine stuff. The Washington Post, quote, former Trump campaign lawyer Joseph DeGeneva, age 80, whose private information was included in the release, said, quote, it's absolutely outrageous. It's sloppy, unprofessional. DeGeneva continued, quote, it's like a first grade elementary level rule of security to redact things like that. First time in my life I've ever knowingly agreed with Joseph DeGeneva. But that's just the start. The Washington Post further discovered that Donald Trump, in his infinite wisdom, has just published the full, accurate, and complete, quote, Social Security numbers, birthplaces, and birth dates of not just random people, including his own lawyer, but, quote, more than 100 staff members of the Senate Church Committee and more than 100 Social Security numbers of staff members of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which investigated the killing of John F. Kennedy. Now, awkwardly for Trump in terms of what he has wrought here, and awkwardly for the rest of us because of the grammar involved, the Post also has to sort of gingerly note that many of these staff members of the Assassinations Committee are themselves still alive. Right? I mean, just because they were on the Assassinations Committee doesn't mean they're not still alive and kicking. And now Donald Trump has ordered all of them to be very thoroughly doxxed, which, among other things, appears to be quite illegal. Both the Washington Post and the New York Times spoke with experts who told them that this very well looks illegal. What Trump just did here appears to pretty bluntly violate U.S. privacy law. At least one person who had his or her Social Security number published by Trump has started discussing bringing a lawsuit against the government for having done this. Probably pretty good grounds to do that. It's also helpful to keep in mind who exactly we're talking about here, right? If these people were Senate staff members and House Select Committee staff members in the 1960s and 70s on committees that were doing intelligence investigations and the investigation of the Kennedy assassination and the investigation of the investigation, I mean, people doing that kind of work in government in the 60s and 70s, well, a lot of those people stayed in government or in public service, and that was one step in what turned into a very impressive career in public service, right? A lot of these people ended up later on in their life with very impressive, very important jobs. The people who Trump just doxed include this list. I mean, this is from the Washington Post again. Quote, many whose Social Security numbers were exposed had become high-ranking officials in Washington. They include a former Assistant Secretary of State, former U.S. Ambassador, researchers in the intelligence world, State Department workers, and prominent lawyers. The Post was first to report that this is what Trump did. The New York Times adds this tonight, quote, White House officials acknowledged today that it was only after the papers were made public that they began combing through them for exposed details. Only after they were made public. So Trump was bumbling around in the halls of the Kennedy Center, being a genius, when he blurted out Monday, apparently with no planning else anywhere else in the government, when he just blurted out that the Kennedy assassination records will be released tomorrow. Because he said it, and that's how the government works now, they then released the documents the next day, Tuesday, and then, quote, on Wednesday, the day after that, that's when the White House ordered that the pages be combed for exposed Social Security numbers, which of course had all already been published by the hundreds. Now, after that ready, fire, aim routine, they're now trying to fix it. The White House has now, quote, directed the Social Security Administration to issue new Social Security numbers to the affected people in an extraordinary response to mitigate the potential harm of the disclosures. They will also be offered free credit monitoring. So yeah, good luck. ambassadors and assistant secretaries of state and high-end Washington lawyers, including some who worked for Trump. Good luck in your 70s and 80s. Now working with the hugely diminished and unbelievably chaotic Social Security Administration to restart in your 70s and 80s everything in your official and financial life with your brand new Social Security number that Donald Trump is having to issue you today as an old person, as if you were a brand new baby. And he has to do that because Donald Trump just published your full name, your birthday, your place of birth, and your unredacted Social Security number on a government website because what? Who's going to tell him no? Who's going to tell him that's not a good idea? And that actually is the most amazing part of all of this, because it does not actually appear to have been a mistake. It's not like they didn't see it coming, and so they were surprised when it happened. Look at this from the Times reporting tonight, quote, administration officials knew before the documents went out that releasing them without redactions would expose some personal information. They knew before the documents went out, but they did it anyway, because he's the king. And what, you're gonna tell him the genius brain fart he had about Kennedy while he was walking around the Kennedy Center is somehow not the world's greatest and well thought out idea? Who around him is gonna be like, sir, It's not how government works in an autocratic system, right? Asked about the debacle, the White House press secretary gave reporters this statement, quote, President Trump delivered on his promise of maximum transparency. Yeah, yes, he did. And the maximum transparency here is like if jeans came in clear and nobody had underwear anymore. Yes, it's maximum transparency. I'm not sure that's good. He definitely delivered, yeah, and who were you or anyone else to question the inherent genius of every impulsive blurt of the 70-whatever-year-old God King who rules without restraint and without any checks and balances and without anyone anywhere near him who ever suggests the word no, let alone pronounces it. Geniuses. Anyway, that's how conscientious they are about the sensitive, personally identifiable information of a lot of really influential people, including one of Trump's own Fox News-ready lawyers. And if they're that conscientious about those folks personally identifying information, guess how conscientious they are about yours? Today, a U.S. federal judge in Maryland ordered Trump to get Elon Musk's so-called Doge effort out of the Social Security Administration. Because, yeah, turns out, guess what they were doing in there? This is from the judge's ruling issued today at 2:12 p.m. Eastern Time. Quote, the Doge team is essentially engaged in a fishing expedition at Social Security based on little more than suspicion. It has launched a search for the proverbial needle in the haystack without any concrete knowledge that the needle is actually in the haystack. Quote, to facilitate the expedition, members of the Social Security Doge team obtained unbridled access to the personal and private data of millions of Americans, including but not limited to Social Security numbers, medical records, mental health records, hospitalization records, driver's license numbers, bank and credit card information, tax information, income history, work history, birth and marriage certificates, and home and work addresses. And yet, the quote, so-called experts on the Doge team never identified or articulated even a single reason for which the Doge team needs unlimited access to Social Security's entire record systems, thereby exposing personal, confidential, sensitive, and private information that millions of Americans entrusted to their government. Indeed, the judge continues, the government has not even attempted to explain why a more tailored, measured, titrated approach is not suitable to the task. Instead, the government simply repeats its incantation of a need to modernize the system. Its method of doing so is tantamount to hitting a fly with a sledgehammer. So, this is the judge's ruling today. The judge ordered that as of right now, Doge is hereby kicked out of all Social Security systems that contain any personally identifiable information. Doge is not allowed to retain any such information they, quote, obtained, derived, copied, or exposed from any Social Security system. They're required to delete all personally identifiable information they obtained, directly or indirectly, from any Social Security system going back to Inauguration Day on January 20th. They must remove any software they installed on any Social Security system, and they cannot change any Social Security systems or alter any software code in anything at that agency. So ordered as of today. And this is another one of those circumstances, which we're kind of getting used to, in which the court's remedy is heartening. Oh, it seems good that they're stopped from doing all those things, but the reason it was needed is the opposite of heartening, right? I mean, what Trump gave Musk and the Doge kids at Social Security, look at that list again of what the judge has just told us they had access to. Quote, this is non-anonymized, specific, personal and private data of millions of Americans, including but not limited to our Social Security numbers, our medical records, our mental health records, our hospitalization records, our driver's license numbers, our bank information, our credit card information, our tax information, our income history, our work history, our birth certificates, our marriage certificates, and our home and work addresses. That's what they were amassing on us at Social Security. And none of us had anything to do with shooting JFK or even looking into it. This was the steps of the Colorado State Capitol today, as Donald Trump signed an executive order to abolish the U.S. Department of Education. All across Colorado, demonstrations held today to stand up for education. Another big protest at UC Berkeley today, also to stand up for education against the assault on it by Donald Trump and his administration. There were also protests at high schools and at middle schools today, really all across the country.
The rally here at Wise High School was part of a larger nationwide call to action.
Are we going to allow our society to divide? No!
This gathering took place at Tacoma Park Middle School in Montgomery County.
Organizers say this is just the beginning, and they're asking everyone to get involved. Attend rallies, town halls, contact your lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Anything that can be done in the defense of public education. Megan McGrath, News 4.
That was Maryland, the shots from those last protests there. Elsewhere in Maryland today, in Silver Spring, people protested to defend NOAA and the National Weather Service at their headquarters building as Trump continues to fire people by the hundreds and now the thousands at NOAA, decimating that agency. Outside an appearance by Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis and Trump's so-called border czar Tom Homan today, people protested in the street against Trump's anti-immigrant policies and arrests. This was in Sarasota, Florida. All over the country today, there were protests to stand up for the U.S. Post Office, which Donald Trump and his top campaign donor, Elon Musk, say they plan to privatize. These protests today in Washington, D.C., and Tampa, Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, in Los Angeles, where Congresswoman Maxine Waters showed up and joined the protesters. In Charlotte, North Carolina, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, they had a big turnout for their protests there to defend the post office today. Same with the one in St. Louis, Missouri. They were chanting, U.S. mail, not for sale. There was a big protest to defend the post office today in New York City. And there were a bunch of these protests in Texas as well, including this one in San Antonio, and this from Dallas-Fort Worth.
Happening right now, North Texas U.S. postal workers are rallying against what they say is the most serious threat in their 250-year history. It's in response to the Trump administration looking to privatize the Postal Service.
The USPS was launched in 1776 and is enshrined in the Constitution. Only Congress has the authority to change its structure. That is why the postal workers are calling on lawmakers in Washington and the public to reject privatization efforts and protect what they're calling a vital public service. This is just the start. More rallies are planned for the U.S. Postal Service as the future of this agency remains uncertain this year. Reporting live in Dallas, Alana Quillen, NBC 5.
Members of Congress are on recess this week, which means many of them are back home in their home districts. And that means their angry and worried and weirded out constituents are demanding to talk with them about what's going on in Washington and around the country. We're going to be speaking tonight with Minnesota Democratic Governor Tim Walz. He's here live. He's been busy, among other things, holding town halls in the congressional districts of Republican members of Congress who won't do it themselves. That continues to be a theme. In Boardman, Ohio, constituents of Republican Congressman Michael Ruley held a protest yesterday demanding that he meet up with them and that he stand up to Trump. In Western New York, constituents of Republican Congressman Nick Langworthy held a town hall with an empty chair representing their congressman, since they say he won't hold any in-person town halls with them himself. Same thing when it comes to Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Her constituents held an empty chair town hall for her as well in Rome, New York. We saw the same thing in the great state of Maine, where there was quite big turnout yesterday at a town hall for, but not with, Republican Senator Susan Collins. She did not attend, but lots of her constituents did. The organizers did put a big blow-up mounted flattering photo of her headshot at the front of the room, to which they addressed their questions and their anger. In Chandler, Arizona, Republican Congressman Andy Biggs held an event that apparently was held for Republicans only. So Andy Biggs' constituents who aren't Republicans or who otherwise couldn't get into that event, they protested outside, where Republicans have been having town halls, like this one by Congressman Pat Fallon in Bonham, Texas yesterday. We are seeing more and more that they are having police remove people from the town hall if those people shout at the member of Congress, basically. In the case of Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, nobody was taken out by police, but he did have to endure the indignity of his constituents in very close proximity to him, just laughing right in his face.
On Iowa, U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley's 99-county tour turned tumultuous this afternoon.
It took place at the public library in Dysart, where nearly 100 people showed up to ask questions to the senator. But KCR GTV9's Brian Tabak reports that number could have been much higher if people knew this town hall was happening. Brian?
Questions range from how Elon Musk is wielding so much power to tariffs and everything in between. Senator Grassley acknowledged the anger directed at the Trump administration, as well as members of the crowd who supported his sweeping changes.
And your role as a long-term senator is to speak up and remember those of us with little power.
At times, questions to Senator Chuck Grassley boiled over in a boardroom in the public library in Dysart. Many of the questions focused on the work of the new Department of Government Efficiency and Elon Musk's impact on shrinking the size of the government.
I want to make it very clear that Musk has no power.
The senator says he's holding the town hall despite the Republican National Committee advising congressional Republicans to stop holding town halls because of how tumultuous the meetings had been across the country. But critics pointed to how even his own office didn't promote this event.
There was no mention of this town hall. I didn't find out about it until late last night.
We did have a large turnout, and there were a lot of tough questions. A lot of people are mad at what's going on in the Trump administration, but I hope I was able to answer their questions effectively.
Chuck Grassley and some of his constituents in Iowa last night. I have just one more of these to show you. This was Laramie, Wyoming last night, Republican Congresswoman Harriet Hageman.
So the question was about Social Security, and what she's accusing me of is standing by while it is being dismantled by Doge. That is absolutely 100% untrue. Absolutely 100% untrue. Doge is not dismantling Social Security. And even with reconciliation, we are not allowed to touch Social Security. So I would request that you actually watch some accurate TV and read valid news, because that is untrue. repeatedly stated that he is not cutting Social Security.
That's in Wyoming. It's amazing how Republicans think they can assuage the American people by saying, hey, I trust Donald Trump on this, don't you? Yeah, and do we all get fresh new Social Security numbers too? Or is that only if we're in the JFK assassination conspiracy theory stuff? And those are the only people who get fresh ones. The Associated Press has now published a list of the Social Security field offices that Trump is closing. We're going to get to that and much more with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. We've got him here live. We've got an update for you. You're also going to want to see on this other case where the Trump administration didn't just lose, they just got obliterated in court today. A lawyer representing one of the people involved in that case is here with us live tonight as well. We got a lot to get to tonight. Stay with us. Lots to come.